What if I told you that we are always under construction? Our physical bodies are all, what we're doing right now is setting us up for the body we will inhabit in the next moment. That is one of the philosophies of this week's guest here on the Chase Jarvis Live show on Creative Live. The guest is Aaron Alexander. Now, if you're familiar with Aaron's work, you're going to be excited for this. And if you're not familiar, I have to tell you, I think you're in for some new thinking. Aaron is a manual therapist. He's a movement coach. He's an author and the host of an amazing podcast I love called the Align Podcast. Aaron takes practices from cultures all over the world. He's gathered these ideas and insights, past podcast guests, his travel, to understand that we have the ability to integrate movement into our daily lives. Even more so, the healthiest populations in the world, they actually don't come from gym culture. So if you shudder at the thought of having to go to the gym 3 times a week for 2 hours at a time, that actually you are right to be wary of that. And in fact, the healthiest cultures don't do that. They have movement infused into every aspect of their life. And it's not as hard as you might think. Aaron is an amazing guest. Being a host of his own show, we have a really intimate conversation. He's super articulate. And look, if you don't have your health in this life, what do you have? Aaron is a master at helping us find that health, find it in a way that is deeply resonant with me. And I know it's going to resonate with you. So I'm going to get out of the way. Enjoy this week's show. Yours truly, and Aaron Alexander. Aaron, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for making this happen, man. I appreciate it. It's great to get to meet you. I've been engaging with your podcast and your work. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And the same is true in reverse. I've been engaging with yours, which is one of the reasons I wanted you on the show. I confessed that just prior to us starting to record, we are recording with video and audio for those of you who are consuming on one or the other platform. And I confessed that I have what I consider to be a posture problem. I don't know how I got it. I don't know where it's going. I know it needs work. And part of your universe is, well, you've got a new book that we're going to talk a little bit about alignment and the Align method. But your work encompasses just health and wellness generally. But I would invite you to, early on here in the show, just give a short overview of how people ought to orient around you and your work, how you self-describe, etc.
Yeah. So the difference in the approach that I take on the podcast and in my book, The Align Method, and on social media and just in general, like my stance in the world of this like movement, fitness, wellness, mind-body conversation is that fitness is beyond just what you do inside of a gym or what you do in a yoga studio or a martial arts dojo. When you're really actively paying attention to the way that you move or the way that you breathe or maybe even the way that you think. But it's, in fact, every moment throughout the day, they're all opportunities to engage with fitness. So it's not something that you do, it's something that you are. It's something that I've said probably 6,000 times at this point. So apologize for it sounding a little redundant in my own mind. But I think that's the big difference, is the awareness that your body's under construction 100% of the time. So as we're sitting here, we have this magical process called Mechanotransduction, which is essentially your cell.
We love a big word. We love a big word around here.
Yeah, let's start. It's just the idea that your cells are responding to the pressures that you expose them to through your existence. So right now you are mechanotransducing your ass and your back, maybe your feet a little bit. And as you press your body up against those spaces, you're creating a bit of an electrical charge around that space, and it's sending signals to the engineers, the cells within your body, that either choose to break down tissue in that space or build it up. So right now you're like this amazing piece of art. You're always an amazing piece of art, but it's like you are chiseling yourself out of marble. You're like a Michelangelo, and you're not just Michelangeloing yourself when you're at a gym, but literally, every every step you take, every breath like it's all a part of the thing.
It's all in a
Yeah,
police song.
yeah, exactly.
Um, well, that's part of the part of what I love about the work that I get to do in bringing uh, the information in the heads and the minds and the hearts of the most creative and entrepreneurial people in the world is this idea of counterintuitive knowledge. And part of one of the things that I wanted to celebrate with your work on the show today, part of what I wanted to help teach the listeners and watchers is how to take an active role in what you talk about as a 24/7 lifelong, always, you're shaping your body, not just at the gym. And one of the reasons I'm a fan of that is because it's obviously wickedly useful, right? Because we would all love to get the benefits of the gym without having to go, or maybe not all of us. That might be an overstatement, but many of us. And the subtext here is that if you do not have your health, what do you have? We talk about building
Yeah,
businesses and creative careers and transforming lives, but if you do not, at a very fundamental level, if you do not have your health, then what have you got? So it's with that sort of backdrop in mind that I wanted to dive in, and I'm gonna cover a bunch of ground, referencing your book and your podcast, um, but specifically the principles that you shared with us in your sort of opening salvo there about how the body is a very dynamic organism and it's always under construction or reconstruction. And
yeah,
I thought one lens, they're doing this selfishly. Hey, I'm the host, so no one can take my mic away. You can turn me off, I guess. But I like to think of myself as okay. I am. I'm Chase. I'm just the guy. And life, we all have different degrees of physical fitness, and each of ours has ebbed and flowed over time from, childhood to adulthood, from the summer to the winter, from on season some sport to off season. And so given that there's so many dynamic things at work, that we have work pressures, we have work stresses, I'm using myself as let's just pretend I'm any average listener. I have discovered now at this particular time in my life, through a combination of elements, I'm going to make these up, but I think anyone could insert their own in there, and I'm finding myself in pain in a way that I have not been before. Let's just do the most basic, look back. I have been a photographer for 20 something years. And what does a photographer do but holds a camera up to one's face, holds like 15 pounds out in front of my head. And if you were listening to the podcast, you can't see this, but so my neck is out in front of the rest of my body, which means my hips have to tilt a certain way, my neck, etc. Also, I am on the road a lot. I spend a lot of my time, instead of in front of a big monitor that I have right now and all of my gear and my stand-up desk, I spend a lot of time on my phone because I'm in the back of an Uber or on an airplane or whatever. And this is another characteristic, because I'm bent over, bent at the neck, looking down at my phone. And then insert n number of other influences. And what I'm finding is my posture sucks. I'm 6 foot tall. I asked someone the other day how tall they thought I was. I was sitting down. They thought I was 5'8" or 5'9".
yeah,
Just in their head, that's what they picture. So there's this stacking of what I would just call problematic inputs. And here I am finding myself for the first time in my life. I consider myself a fit person. I'm in pain. I've got legit ongoing sort of pain in my neck. I feel it negatively impacting my life. It impacts the amount of work that I can do, the joy that I can have, the movement that I would normally be doing as a part of my physical regimen. Where ought I start if I'm leaning into Aaron's method? Help me, and by extension, of course, the listeners, because I'm
yeah,
making myself out to be the average Joe or
yeah,
Jane. Where do I get started?
yeah. So the first thing, there's been extensive research around postural patterns and things that we would typically historically deem to be problematic postural patterns being the primary cause of pain. And it's really fuzzy and blurry to suggest that, say, a forward head posture, or maybe say a scapular winging, or a dowager's hump or a hyperkyphosis or valgus knee, or any of that is a direct one-to-one association to this is causing the pain. I think pain is such a broad, complex subject, and it's can be highly subjective. And there is an aggregate of objective variables that exist, and they can all stack up to eventually create in a person's inner experience to be somewhat of an alarm going off. And so I would think of it from the lens, if we were working together, for example, or if you're reading the Align Method book, or any of that, I'd be coming to it from the lens of what is your stress bucket, which isn't a term that I came up with, but looking at how is your sleep, how is your nutrition, how is your general management of your mind throughout the day. Are you overrun with the same repetitive thought that essentially is about like some version of doomsday that's particular to you? And then including within that postural patterns, and how are you moving and how are you not moving? And so I think a big culprit in the movement conversation is, like sedentarism is killing you. It's the new cigarettes. It's like all the bad things in the world. But if you look at, this is a little bit divergent from your question. We'll come back to specifically like your experience with pain and how we can address that. But a common culprit would be that sedentary lifestyle. And when you look at cultures such as in Tanzania, for example, Hadza people, there was some research from University of Southern California where researchers went out there and observed the amount of movement and the quality of movement, the manner of movement of these people throughout the day. And what they found with the Hadza tribes people was that they were in resting positions that we commonly demonize as being like the end of the world for us. They're in these resting positions about similar time frames as industrialized cultures. So the average was 9.82 hours each day. It's like 9 to 10 hours a day, which is pretty similar to most like you and I type people. The difference is the manner in which they are in these resting positions. So they're spending time kneeling, they're spending time squatting, they're spending time cross-legged, maybe in a straddle position. They're essentially moving like if you've ever been around a kid. Do you have kids?
I don't have kids. I am the uncle to many, but I love the way I love this concept in movement, looking at how kids move. I'm well aware of it, and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, kids are teachers.
Yeah.
They haven't been obstructed by the concept of who they think they are, who they think they're supposed to be. They haven't been institutionalized to carry out someone else's will. Ultimately, I don't want to get excessive like tinfoil hat direction. I mean, we can, but the concept of sitting down and hunching over into a chair wearing raised heeled shoes and then closing in the potential range of motion for your visual muscles, which is also associated to that stress bucket. And having, typically carrying a backpack over one side, trying to be cool, maybe you hunch over a little bit for that, you sag your pants. Like there's all these cultural constructs that impact and imprint the way that a person moves from a young age. Now we impose a little bit of shame in there, maybe a lot of bit of shame in there, wherever that came from. Maybe it's some Puritan thing, maybe it's who cares where it came from? It's very common, and so now maybe we're embarrassed to really show up and feel full, expressive, confident, upright, tall, like take up space. So this comes into a very common conversation, maybe especially like a tall, if like a girl is tall, they'll literally oftentimes shrink up because they don't want to take up too much space. And so it's such an interesting thing, just kind of conveying the idea that your movement is so much more than just the amount of kettlebells that you lift or the barbells or the type of pull-ups that you do. Literally every thought that you make throughout the day, it has a physiological structural translation. So if you are afraid, if you are really proud, if you are really sad, all of those emotions have direct one-to-one postural physiological expressions and translations. So
Yeah.
I know I didn't answer anything there, but just kind of painting a little bit of a picture of like this pain. And it's like we come from a mechanistic mindset broadly. So we, of course, think, what's wrong in my car? It must be the carburetor. Let's change out a couple nuts and washers and boom, we're done. It's like, no, no, you are a complex system as opposed to a complicated system. Complicated system, you change out the nuts and the washers, done. Complex system, it's like, oh boy, it thrives on variables. It's kind of the opposite in that way. And so it's more of an orchestra. So it's like, okay, let's have all the musicians come together. Let's have a conversation and start to create a relationship.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, and I think one might. I'll take a liberty here and couch that is, let's approach this holistically. It's not just that you work at a computer, or it's not just that you are a photographer, or it's not. There's a holistic approach to your work, and you know, I believe similarly. I'm also a huge mindset person, and friend Tony Robbins, for example, talks about if you sort of like you have to you know your physiology, you can change your mentality by changing your physiology. What is a confident, proud, excited, happy person, do they look hunched over and bent, and are they small and meek? Not normally. And if you stand up straight, put your shoulders back, and open yourself up. I think there's the science of smiling, right? If you smile, then
Yeah.
the actual muscles of smiling will drive positive inputs into your psychology, etc. So if we can then say, all right, Mr. Alexander, you've got yourself a holistic approach to this. I want to get back to my question, which is cool. Where do I start? We can
Yeah.
throw rocks at my heritage or my,
Sure.
my soccer injuries or my professional woes. And
Yeah.
I want to qualify this. My pain is pain with a small p. Like I have historically been a very fit, very active, like painfully active person.
Mm-hmm.
And so this like pain it's bugging me a little bit in the back of my head. So there is some of that psychology at work, but
Yep.
knowing that you're going to try and think of our bodies as a holistic dynamic mechanism, I still want to know where to start.
Yep. So, where are you experiencing pain in particular? Not that it's completely relevant to this, where you're having the pain is exactly like where we need to address, but where are you experiencing pain?
Base of the skull from sort of top of the spine down to mid back.
Okay. How long has it been happening? Is there anything that exacerbates it particular? Is there a time
It's
of day? Is there an activity?
usually in the afternoon, I feel it more. I do find myself sitting in really poor conditions. Just I'll try and move. Especially when we started working at home across the pandemic, I started moving my workspace around because I felt re-energized if I would move from the kitchen table to the couch to my
Sure.
stand-up desk to move around a little bit. And it has been noticed. Other people have noted. I gave you the example of my posture. Just
Yep.
someone thought I was 5'9" or something the other day, and I'm basically been 6 foot since I was probably 17 years old,
Yep.
and I find myself not standing upright. So the combination of all these things is like, okay, in the afternoons, especially recently, and again, I just had a eclipsed a particular birth age or a particular age that is making me reconsider. Like, wait a minute, I want to defy this age. I don't want to, age is a number. I want to be healthy. So
Yep.
it's there's a bunch of thinking going on as well. Like, how do I restart, recharge, and realign?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would seek out a practitioner. I think seeing a really good physical therapist or a manual therapist or maybe a rolfer or maybe someone that's effective with dry needling and really understands kinesiology and
Mm-hmm.
where the bits ought to be, and be able to actually examine and take you through a full diagnostic and say, okay, when you put your arms up over your head, here's what your scapulae are doing. When you are walking, here's your gait pattern. Like I can actually be able to sit back and spend some time and see what's happening, be able to adjust and then check to see if that makes a difference. Okay, yes, no. Okay, if yes, okay, let's keep going in that direction. So the problem solving path of working with pain through the mechanistic lens, I think having a practitioner by your side is invaluable. That being said, there are things that we can talk about in a conversation as far as like shotgun exercises or self-care approaches that anybody can integrate in their life. Something that would be supportive, so postural patterns, typically most of the research would suggest that postural patterns they're not a one-to-one connection to shoulders doing this, it means you're going to be in pain. If you were to look at MRIs or x-rays of a lot of people's spines or knees or shoulders, what you'd find is some people it looks like a complete like mess. Like there's no way that knee should be functioning properly, and they're completely fine. Same thing with discs, same thing with shoulders. And then the inverse can be happening with someone who is in a lot of pain. You look at it's like, well, the charts look pretty good. But what is consistently helpful is movement. So if you are taking yourself through full ranges of motion, it acts as a really beautiful shotgun for just restoring your tissues back to a baseline of health. And it's telling your nervous system that, you have something to show up for. I think one of the most challenging things for the human organism is to outsource the necessity for us to need to show up. Like it's such an amazing thing that we've gotten to a point where we can literally some of us could lay on a couch, trade cryptocurrency, and just have your blue lit screen phone in front of your face, which is inherently stressful to be in that position, actually. And we can talk about the reasons why, and have, food delivered to your face, have whatever you need just delivered directly to your face. If you pay enough, they'll even feed you. And it's I'm so impressed and enamored by that, and like happy, like good effort, human culture for us to have arrived at that point. But we need to move, in order for our cells and our nervous system to function optimally. So something that I would suggest just as like a baseline, get things moving and just add this into your work life, would be get a pull-up bar in your a doorway that you commonly pass through. You got one now?
It's 7 feet from where I'm standing right now.
How often do you use it? And what do you do
Well,
with it? Do you typically just do like
let me
typical pull-ups?
so I just came off of a cycle in the summer. I did not continue it in the fall with any determination, but I did 50 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, 50 sit-ups every day. And so the concept of 50 pull-ups a day, people are like, oh, that's a lot, or 50 pull-ups or push-ups, not enough. So regardless of the volume, just doing those exercises every day had a very transformative effect on
Right.
my psychology, my body, and the hanging thing was new. So I got a pull-up bar that actually could move around the house.
Nice.
And it was crazy helpful.
Yeah.
I would say that I had zero pain. And again, you're talking about someone who I was an outdoor action sports photographer for 20 years. I
Yep.
played, Olympic development soccer. So hyper overactive my entire life. And yet I can still find myself slipping into periods of inactivity. And I'm thinking about the people who would identify as less active than they desire, like how easy it was for me to work these aspects into my day. For example, the pull-up bar that I'm pointing to, which is now 7 feet from my head.
Right. Yeah. So there's an interesting book outside of the one that I made. I have a chapter in the book all about the power of hanging. And but there's a book that I based a reasonable chunk of that chapter around, was a book by a guy called Dr. John Kirsch, who wrote a book called Shoulder Pain ? And he was an orthopedic surgeon that found that he claims in the book that 99% of the patients that he would be treating with surgery for some variety of shoulder impingement syndrome were healed, relieved of their pain entirely just through going a basic. Oh, there you go. You got what was the surgery you had?
It was a Bankart procedure, a full rebuild of the glenoid labrum, suture anchors. It was from chronic dislocation from early football, then later soccer
Right.
injuries
Yeah.
around college, early sort of young pro, early late college universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the human body, through just, if we were in a more, like, natural is a very relative word as well. You get like the naturalistic fallacy to think that everything you deem to be natural is just like better. And it's like, what does natural mean in the first place? But if you were in a reality where you were maybe moved by the sun, you're set to a circadian rhythm. You got up with the sun, you kind of, and after that it was like red light and fires. You had varied contours of ground that your ankles and your feet were exposed to, which inevitably that would trickle up through the rest of your nervous system, your body. You're reaching up overhead with some level of regularity. You're squatting up and down with some level of regularity. You're kneeling. You're maybe walking a little bit more. The big thing is you're just exposed to nature. Like
Hmm.
nature heals. And it's almost, we take a lot of these simple solutions to feel almost like trite or oversimplistic. If something's too complicated, it's probably kind of stupid. like 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 we self-organize very well if you place us into the proper environment. And so my approach working with clients, or the book or the podcast or any of that, is really kind of like a, are you familiar with Bruce Lipton? Have you ever done anything with him, or
No, no.
biology? I believe he's fantastic. He was one of the primary, um, he spearheaded the concept of epigenetics, and he's been around forever. He's probably in his like late 60s or 70s now. And so the concept of epigenetics, that we don't just have this genetic disposition and whatever your mom and dad, whatever they granted you, like that's your cards. It's your genetics change based off of environmental conditions. And one of the things that he suggested to me in a conversation that I recorded with him was, uh, when working with cells in a petri dish, if you wanted to change the cell, whatever the constitution, whatever aspect of the cell, you change the culture in the dish that the cell resides in. And so that pull-up bar is a beautiful example. And you had that experience of like, I know that we still have the next stuff, so we can keep on marching down the line here with different solutions. But that's an environmental condition that you just made a slight addition into your world, that suddenly you're moved by the pull-up bar being there. The other thing that I would recommend, looking at what's happening in your neck outside of just exclusively being a neck thing and looking at more globally, like full body thing, would be what's happening in the function of the range of motion in your ankles, what's happening in the range of motion in your hips. So what's your range of motion like when you squat? Can you like do a deep squat? Is that comfortable for you?
Yeah, I would consider very deep. I can do single leg pistols with
Oh, great.
each leg. I
Good for
can
you.
comfortably sit with my, fully at the bottom of a squat with my heels on the
Nice.
ground for more than 10 minutes. This is all, Dr. Kelly Starrett stuff, mutual friends of ours
Great.
here's
Yeah.
like all that I'm pretty good at. Ankles, notoriously horrible. I have one that will lock up on me, broken
Okay.
many times, torn ligaments, uh, you know, potentially, certainly more than 20 times, maybe as many as 50 times. Like I got my ankles taped every day for 6 years throughout, late high school, early college. So
Yeah.
horrible ankle on one side that, hasn't, and again, for folks listening out there in the show right now, this is not about Chase Jarvis's injuries and what. I'm hoping that you can put yourself, whatever your little, micro malady may be. We're thinking about this all through the lens that Aaron's, projecting
No, yeah, all
movement
these,
and alignment as
yeah,
a vector for health.
yeah, these are all really common pattern. I mean, these are like patterns of modernity. A lack of ankle dorsiflexion that's just a modern person sitting in a chair for a good chunk of their life. Any kid pre 5 years old has no problem with any of these positions.
Yeah.
So literally in the fetal stage, as you're coming out, like on the edge of coming out in the third trimester, coming out of your mother, you start to develop these little facet joints on the edge of the tibias, to be able to actually have this sliding pathway for you to be able to go through a full deep squat. So your physiology, your innate physiology is like, cool. Like, is the kid ready to squat? Yep, ready to squat. Okay, get him out, like ready to go. And then we abandon that, and the squatting position. Not that I'm going to make this be a whole conversation around championing squatting, but it literally just another example of how we so directly go against our inherent native disposition, our inherent physiological patterns. A lot of modern culture has, abandoned those range of motions and even made it seem like, I don't know, like stupid or goofy, or like, oh, you're like a hippie, or you're like, oh, you're like a yoga person. If you're like in a natural human resting position, you're just squatting while you're waiting for a bus or something like that. People are like, oh, wow, like what's with that guy? So to be strange or to be weird in a culture that is, it seems like statistically each year we're becoming more and more addicted to opiates of various degrees, whether it's pharmaceuticals or, anti-psychotic medication or anti-anxiety medication, or, self-harm, people like wanting to hurt themselves. It's like when you're living in a culture where statistically it seems like those trends are continually going in that direction, to be okay with being different, and being weird, I think that's a big step. And a person squatting, for example, like that's the way that the human organism defecates. When you go through it, if you cannot deep squat, like what is more foundational to your health to be able to take a dump? So when you go into a deep squat position, it literally elongates your rectum. It reduces, it's called the anorectal angle, the puborectalis muscle. It wraps around that. It relaxes, allows your poop chute to get spaciousness enough and long enough for you to actually have a proper poo. So we've just taken that off of the table as like, oh no, that's, some brutal tribalistic stuff, to squat to take a poo. That's crazy. So
Yeah, if
there's,
you go to Africa, the toilets are holes in the ground. They're
yeah,
literally like floor
animals,
level. I remember animals,
animals.
right?
Yeah.
And
So,
and here we are. It's the healthiest. Yeah, that now they're developing tools to elevate the bathroom floor called potty squatties and things like that
yeah,
that we're introducing into
right.
Western culture to try and mimic those movements. Yeah.
Yeah. So all that's not me taking a shot at modern culture or romanticizing anything like older than now. It's just saying, well, a lot of these things that we have done for millennia that we've, kind of denied ourselves of, either intentionally or unintentionally, they're really easy to reintegrate back into your life. And they act as de-stressing systems.
Right.
And so when you are going into a deep squat position, naturally you're taking your ankles through a deeper range of motion. You're opening up the muscles in and around your pelvic floor. You're elongating and decompressing your lower back. You're taking your spine through that full spinal flexion, and then you come back into a bit more extension. So it's like a little mini massage for your whole entire body. uh, Something that I would suggest for you, getting back to the original question of like, okay, this is great, my freaking neck hurts. um, I would start looking at what are your respiratory patterns. How do you breathe? So every time you take a breath, that breath is an expansion and a contraction. That's, if you pay a massage therapist to work on your tissues, they're probably going to do some variety of expanding, or contracting, compressing some tissues, and then that will lead to an expansion response. Now a new fluid comes back into that space. Every time you breathe, that's what you're doing. So I would have you lay down on your back is just something that could be nice for you to do. I would put a little pillow back behind your suboccipital ridge space, just to kind of raise your neck up, or you can maybe put like a little ball back there or something like that if you want to be a little bit more aggressive. So you're elongating that space. You might have chronic tension, especially in that cervical spine area, and then also followed that, it might be in your lower back. It's really common with many people. And then put your feet up on, it's called an active rest position. We have this in the book, and a ton more exercises for people. But put your feet up on the edge of a couch, or if you're fancy, you have like a yoga swing at your house someplace. I think that'd be great for you to have something to hang
Fancy.
from.
That's definitely
Yeah.
fancy. I don't have
Yeah,
those.
or whatever. Yeah, if you're crazy, I think get a yoga swing, man. I think that's a really cool thing to have. You referenced Tim Ferriss. He's a fan of
Yeah.
acro yoga and things of the
Oh yeah.
sort. And
Yep.
so that's having something like that in your life. Once again, it's just adding a visual cue, so that now suddenly, oh, I'm compelled to get into the yoga swing that I heard about on this crazy podcast, and I flip myself upside down and I decompress my whole entire spine. I open up my hips, I open up my adductors. I do, it's just this natural therapeutic movement, that it's not a thing I drive and hunch myself up into a car for 30 minutes to arrive at some person's office. This is being implemented 1 to 5 times a day because I just walk past it. That times a month, times a year, times a decade, it adds up, and
Yeah.
so laying down on your back, prop your head up a little bit so you're not in that kind of like crunched cervical neck position. Raise your feet up so that your sacrum is kind of almost like it's traction would be the term. Like it's almost like lifted off of the ground. So
Mhm.
your hips are almost like on the edge of dangling, like maybe just a centimeter off of the ground or so. Relax into that position. Bring your hands onto the sides of your ribs, specifically on the sides. A lot of times in yoga classes, we hear about like belly breathing. So you have a bunch of people just distending their bellies, trying to be spiritual with their breath, but still not actually engaging that diaphragm to be able to get that full expansion of the lungs. So bring your hands on the side of the ribs and just take a few nose breaths. Really emphasize the exhalation. So you could do maybe a version of box breathing, do a 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds. I would extend the exhalation, maybe do exhale for 8 seconds, 6 seconds, and go through 6 rounds of that and just have a moment and see what that does to your autonomic nervous system. Because if you're having pain, especially chronic pain, um, in your body like that, there's probably some level of stress component within that. And again, mechanical stress is a part of that conversation, but it's not the absolute.
Yeah.
So in that practice of just laying down, taking a moment to observe your breath, start to engage that diaphragm in a different way, start to engage that the entirety of your torso and your respiratory capacity, uh, and just have a moment to have a little decompression and a check in with your breath. And I think my guess, because you seem like a really sensitive person, my guess is you would be surprised with the impact of something as simple as that. And if you're willing to do 6 breaths, try it for 10, and start to implement that. If it helps, say, cool, I'm going to do that, whatever, every day before a call. I just introduce that into my thing. So that's a start.
So yeah, I think so. Let's put my problems on pause here, and let's open the dialogue a little bit more generally with your
Sure.
philosophies. Let's for a second go to Align Method, which is your book. Again, highly recommended. I wouldn't have anybody on the podcast whose book or work I didn't recommend, but the Align Method, a modern movement guide for a stronger body, sharper mind, and a stress-proof life. So I think my guess is that applies to about everyone who's listening. And the thing that I gravitated towards with your work in particular, as you just talked about, there's like all these, whether it's environmental cues, the concept of movement as a methodology to protect and strengthen against the trials of everyday life, whether that's hanging, whether that's breathing. Can you talk a little bit how the work that you advocate for, your life's work, is different than someone who's like, right now there's maybe something like, oh, I work on my breathing every day because I practice transcendental meditation and I do that once a day. Or someone else is saying like, oh yeah, I go to the yoga studio 3 times a week and I consider myself relatively healthy. Um, how would you orient the listeners around how your universe is different than those other simple examples that I gave?
Well, I have a lot of appreciation, respect for anybody that's trying, and investing themselves in their work and are making mistakes and are, like pushing the ball forward, and so I think, the thing to do from a branding lens is to, really set yourself apart, make sure everyone knows how what I'm doing is different and this is the path, but I think that whatever resonates with a person, like we just need to start the conversation, and so there's a lot of paths leading up to the top of the mountain, and a person can think that their path is the superior path because it worked for them. But I think ultimately, whether breath work is what engages you with having a deeper relationship with your body, and that spills out in your relationship with other people, and maybe into your business, and or maybe that's CrossFit, or maybe that's dancing, whatever it may be. I think there's a lot of different paths. Um, my intention with the Align method, and working with clients, and the general broader conversation that I'm really interested in, is instead of simply reducing down these specific aspects of ourselves. So breath is one of the toggles or tools that humans have the opportunity to engage with to change their state. A long exhalation will put you into a more calm, parasympathetic, rest, relax type place. If you take a breath in through your mouth like that, say you're surprised, that's teeing you up for that, that sympathetic response. And so that's beautiful. So we have the option or the opportunity to engage with our breath any way that we choose, because we understand the basic user's manual and how to pull the toggles. So our visual system, when it's a very similar system, these are all integrated systems. When you are looking up at something myopically up close, you're focused in, right? That's going to cue your nervous system to be in that more executive function, get stuff done. There's a potential threat. We need to either fight or flight or, sort this out. When you allow your eyes, your visual system, to go into that panoramic view, take the entirety of the picture in the savannah, whatever you're looking at, or just you're just spacing out in a room, it sends a signal to your autonomic nervous system that, oh, okay, Chase is chilling. There's clearly no reason to be in, to boost up norepinephrine or cortisol or any of these stress hormones, because if we were in that state, Chase would be focused in on a single threat. So acknowledging and understanding, say, okay, when I'm working out in the gym, I can leverage these sensual systems in my body the same way that I would leverage these mechanical principles. So the next level within that, everything, temperature regulation, all of these are a part of fitness and movement. And then the one that most people are, the more common conversation would be, the very like obvious, like mechanical engineering, hip hinging and neutral spine and things of the sort. So what I really care about, and that what would separate the Align method, would be providing a comprehensive, simple, digestible guide for people to understand how to drive their body effectively. Because we get that with a car. You go through, get a learner's permit, you have a person drive beside you, you parallel park, you read books for a while, you take classes about it. And it just blows my mind that we don't have that in most modern school systems. We never really get the user's manual on how to drive the body. So that's it.
I love it. I love it. And if I'm open to the book right now, and early on you talk about the different archetypal,
Yeah.
postural archetypes, and
Yeah.
with like the mopey would be how I would consider what I think of myself as having poor posture. But there's anxious, which is head down. There's uh uh swole,
Swole.
which is like all puffed up like bodybuilder type.
Yeah.
There's bendy, where you see people that are kind of like noodly,
Yep.
and aligned, which is um the what one would envision as I think just aligned. Your spine is aligned, your shoulders are back, your hips, knees, shoulders are supporting one another adequately, etc. And the it's dramatic when you think about how like most bodies can flop into those different archetypes. And
Yeah.
part of this, your methodology is oriented towards having visual cues in your universe, this idea of movement as lifestyle. As there's a quote in the second chapter, the George Bernard Shaw quote: we don't stop playing because we get old, we get old because we stop playing.
That's it.
If we just think about the archetypes, the cues in your system, describe for us what, if you could map onto someone's life, what the day might look like, because this is a good way, I
Sure.
think, to bring your philosophy to life. What do you
Yeah.
think, if you could, if someone's being treated by you, they
Yeah.
are a patient, what is an example of, walk us through how you would coach their life to be? And you can take a real or fictitious person. I just
Yeah.
want to help those listeners understand, uh, I guess, your overall lens and what's possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, seeking for things that are set this approach apart from a more common model would be thinking about, first, how do you want to feel? So the way that I want to feel might be different. I mean, it's probably different than the way that you want to feel compared to somebody else. So I think starting off and just really defining, where is it that I want to go? And I think that we're quick to apply moralistic judgments of like, oh, that diet's bad, or that diet's good, or that fitness regimen's good or bad. And I like, for something to be good or bad, you first have to define the intended outcome. And then, is that taking us further away or closer to the intended outcome, which ultimately is subjective? So
Let's talk
having
about
that.
vitality, energy, lust
Yeah.
for life, connectedness to their environment, um, the ability to express oneself.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, so if it was that type of person that is like expression and such, the big thing that I would be saying is starting to incorporate activities that are coordination based, and outside as much as you comfortably can, and allowing yourself to, uh, when you're just outside in nature, we're solving thousands of problems per minute. As you're just riding a bike down a path, you're running all of these equations, determining when is this person going to be in this place, when is like the algorithms. There's so you're just running through these systems, and it's like that's really what engages the body, and so many great thinkers historically have come from a place of like, oh, I get my best ideas when I'm in the bathtub, or when I'm sailing, or when I'm taking a walk, and it's literally it enlivens our minds, it enlivens our humanity, enlivens our not just our cells and our neuromuscular system, our musculoskeletal system, but the way that we think. It informs the way that we think. So starting off would be, getting a regular sleep schedule is a big thing. So
Mm.
most research would suggest that, ideally you're getting up and you're watching the sunrise, and you're exposing your eyes to the sun and getting that infrared light, um, at those early hours. That's going to be really supportive. But the big thing is that you are. I mean, that's amazing if you're doing that. But maybe some people cannot do that because of work or whatever it may be. Uh,
Or you live in Seattle.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
And
in
there's
so
no
in
sun.
so yeah, so in that case, you could get lights, to replicate that, and introduce those into your house. So Andrew Huberman, he helped with the vision chapter in the book. I'm very thankful for that. And one of the things that he does is he has some type of light, that because he wakes up before the sun, and so his sunrise essentially is that light that he exposes his eyes to. But having consistency of sleep patterns is going to be a massive thing. So getting your circadian rhythms down, so that each day, there's some level of dependability in your life. So from a hormonal level, they really thrive on dependability. So it's kind of like a relationship. It's like you have a relationship with your cells. So the starting point, I would say, is coming to that place of, treating. In the book, I reference a buddy of mine called Colin Wilson. He retired now, but he played ice hockey for the Colorado Avalanche. And one of the things he said to me while we were just doing a sauna session, and he like passively like throwaway statement, was that sleep is a weapon. And it was like, oof, I'm like that's it. So really looking at sleep as, you're wearing your PJs and it's like this soft yin, you're like candles, like, no, sleep is a weapon. So leveraging that and really being intentional about that, I think, is going to be primary. And then from there, nature is a weapon. So spending time outside, getting enough vitamin D, for example, or allowing your body to be able to create enough vitamin D, and acknowledging and recognizing that your your muscles, reframing the concept of muscles as just being these pulley systems, but think of them as like endocrine glands, and as you are pumping and pushing and pulling and extending and contracting, you are engaging your physiology to be producing, the neurochemistry that makes you feel well. So however that happens for you, follow the feel. If you love running, running can be rough one from a hormonal perspective. Long distance running can be kind of challenging. So I would maybe, if there was any kind of issues there, I would say looking into like maybe like sprint training or like interval training is going to be, a pretty good approach. But whatever makes you feel alive, make sure that you make that be a primary focus in your life. So whatever, if that's rollerblading, if that's dancing, if that's Taibo, like whatever the thing that just lights you up, because what lights me up absolutely is going to be different than somebody else. And I would say,
Yeah.
open up your life, open up your schedule to find that, because going back to the George Bernard Shaw quote, like it's when you stop playing, like that's when your body starts to, it starts to collapse, because if we're not playing here, like what are we doing here? And so start to implement that idea that, of that concept of play that you get in your movement practice throughout the day, and implement that play into your relationships. So when you're talking with someone, say, I'm at the gym, whether you're in an office space or whether you're doing a podcast with somebody, like ideally this conversation between you and I, it's like this kind of form of dance or this form of play. And if at the end of that, we both had that mutual experience of play, that was a good conversation. If it's something, this thing's like, oh, we're kind of like, I'm here, selling a book, and you're over here selling sponsorships on your podcast. You're just going to kind of grind through this. Nobody gives a shit. Like nobody wants to hear that.
And you can
like,
tell too. You can tell, right?
So we're so enamored by play, and there's a guy, what is his name? Jacques Panskep, who's like one of the leading researchers in the field of play, who's notorious for tickling rats. If you ever heard seen rats being tickled, yeah, it's kind of creepy. So he defined like a whole separate network in the brain that's committed to play. It's a part of our humanity, and some of the research that he did with rats specifically was found if small rats are wrestling with bigger rats, the bigger rats will allow the smaller rats to win about 30% of the time. And the reason for that is because they want to play this infinite game. So I think that integrating that concept, infusing that concept into the way that you live your life, um, you know, that's gonna pay dividends, and that's gonna keep you youthful deep into your life. And I think that we're continually, because we come from a more kind of mechanistic mindset, maybe since, I don't know, like Newtonian physics or something. Like there's been a transition where we kind of typically we're in this reductionist mechanistic mindset. So we're saying, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this. But I think that if we can infuse the overarching philosophy of, like following your bliss, like Joseph Campbell, and allow that to fit to your specific scenario, I think that's huge. And I think that's when we get into some of like the French paradox, where like they're eating baguettes, they're smoking cigarettes, like they're drinking wine all day. Why are they so much healthier than us? Like, I'm orthorexic, I should be amazing. It's like, okay, there's something else.
Yeah.
And
I
so I
think
think that's
no, I'm a huge fan of what you're saying right now. Specifically, this idea that play is something that we have to reward ourselves if we do enough hard work,
right.
That in order to get some outcome. The irony is that it's actually the other way around, right? If you play, then you're going to work smarter, work better. You're going to be, I think, all of the physiological and emotional benefits that you talked about with play, or that we can use the French as an example of. And that's actually the thing that delivers the results, rather than the other way around. The fact that, that creative studios sometimes will create a culture of just joy and connection and belonging, because you're in this process of like playing. People look at the work that the designers do as they just goofing around. I'm over here, I'm in the growth team, and I'm over here crunching data and trying to find the 1% that does X or Y. Look at those folks over there in the design studio. They've got a dartboard and they're throwing darts at the campaigns that they like the most on the bulletin board. But the irony is that there's this this concept, this connection, or to go back to the Shaw quote, it's not really that you stop playing when you get old, it's that you get old when you stop playing.
Yeah, and it's acknowledging that the stories that we tell ourselves, and there was a handful of stories that I heard you speak about in relation to your own body, saying that how did you call your ankle? You said it's like some version of it's jacked up or it's shitty. You're like, I got a shitty ankle. It's just
it is a hamburger.
Yeah, right. And so it's be careful with the stories that we rehearse.
Yeah.
And so that's an important thing, is to how many people go through this existential crisis of I'm 40, what does this mean? I'm 50, and what does this mean? We put ourselves into a double bind of having these expectations of who we think we're supposed to be, and then that can end up translating into a musculoskeletal pattern. And in the book I reference William James a lot. He's known as the father of modern psychology, and he was one of the primary voices in the conversation of looking at sensation and experience and emotion from a lens of bottom up as opposed to top down. So bottom up being like body up into the mind, and top down being mind down to the body. Which again, mind body, like your body doesn't know these terms. These again are made up terms. A concept of a mind and a body, we made that up. So first
Right.
it's like acknowledging that. But one of the things that he suggested, I reference in the book, is when I think the reference he used was if you see a bear in the woods, because he was, from X amount of 100 odd years ago. Is if you see a bear, he would suggest that your body moves you into a sensation of fear, as opposed to the concept that the bear invokes, some neuronal pathways in the brain. And then that is the primary, which even still the neural pathways would be a form of movement. You're still moved.
Yeah.
Right? There's no sensation without movement. So you're defining, it's just moving the bar of your specific definition of movement. But ultimately, for you to experience it is movement. And so when you're going through some scenario, whatever the thing may be, you can start to tap into a lot of different levers. Like that's the big thing that like the metaphor that I probably use more than is necessary. Like we have these toggles and we have these levers that we can pull on, to change our state, to use like Tony Robbins talk. But most of us don't. We just don't. We're blind to seeing the levers on the wall, or on our body. And so when we are moving throughout our days, it's like I think that in the book I have I kind of do a break down an exercise of breaking down the way that you'd want to feel, and then visualizing yourself in that state, and specifically visualizing from a postural, from a movement pattern lens. Like what's the shape of your body when you're in that state? And it's such an interesting thing. If you think that, you take a moment, it's like, yeah, what does contentment or satisfaction or like love, like what's the postural expression of love? And be able to give yourself a moment and start to feel into that. And then, test it out. Go into your next business meeting or your next conversation with your son or daughter or wife or girlfriend, and move into the conversation with that lens, and just see what happens.
Yeah. It's incredible to me how this, the mind body connection, it takes me to a piece really early, maybe even back in the intro of the book, 3 principles that you call into awareness. One, that you have no idea the depth of your physical capacities or your resilience. 99.999% of the population has never come up against the edge of those things. So you knowing your true depth, breadth, what's possible for your physical capabilities.
Yep.
Most people don't know. Two, that it is the natural state of a human to be pain free. And
Yep.
three, that your body is actually designed to function over a lifetime that could easily eclipse 100 years. So
Yep.
these are not sort of like suppositions. This is fact, right? Most people don't know the definition of, or the depth of their possibility. Humans are meant to be pain free, and your body is an incredible mechanism that's meant to carry you around for more than 100 years.
Yep.
If you just focus on those three things and you take a series of what I would consider simple, not easy, but simple steps, like you can actually start to understand and experience the fundamentals that you pointed to. I also want
Yeah.
to, so go ahead and comment on that,
No.
Aaron, if you want.
Well, I mean, it's just coming back to the stories that we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
starting to adjust, tinker with the narrative that you ascribe to with doing hard things, and so if you can get, like, I have some friends, do you know the Seek Discomfort people, Amar, or any of those guys? I feel like they're in your wheelhouse.
No, I
Anyways,
don't, but
sorry. Yeah,
no,
yes,
I'm no,
yes,
these
yes,
are
there,
notes
yes,
I'm taking.
yes Theory is the YouTube channel. They got like a big YouTube channel. They're super great. But their brand is called Seek Discomfort. And that's the thing, is if you can start to change that narrative, where the things that make you uncomfortable, that's, you've actually shifted it, that's where you derive the juice from. It's like,
Yeah.
when I'm uncomfortable, I know it means that I'm in the right spot. It means that there's a reward on the other side of that. So you're like Pavlov's dog, classical conditioning yourself into, aha, I'm in that that discomfort again. And eventually it becomes like whack-a-mole, as opposed to being in a place that, through this process of human evolution, we've done such a good job at avoiding discomfort, so that where it's like, oh crap, like we needed some of it.
Yeah.
Did,
Yeah.
we were too effective,
Right.
and so
Well,
it's just,
yeah, the cold plunge is a great example, right? Wim
yeah,
Hof has endorsed your book. I've got a cold plunge
yeah,
here at my home, and I'm in it every morning. And there's not one morning
all
I'm
right,
like, you know what? It's going to be so fun. But as soon as you're in there, you're like, I do this for a reason. This actually
oh
does feel
yeah,
good. And this, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Or if you've ever been, you go, speaking of creature comforts, you go camping, and if you realize it takes you like 25 minutes, 30 minutes to make a cup of coffee,
yep,
you guys, and then the coffee or the food or the meal tastes somehow better
yeah.
because
And
it
what
was
did you
so freaking
do?
hard to make.
What did you do? You moved yourself into that coffee, right?
Yeah.
So I have this
Yeah.
amazing coffee machine in my kitchen, where it literally, I press a button and there's coffee beans in it, and it goes espresso, it does the whole things, and I just walk away. I come back and like, bam, like coffee, caffeine straight to the face, and I take it, and I always feel like fine after drinking it, but I didn't move myself into the coffee. So
It's,
any, for like your whole history forever, until like the very, like, if it was modernity, or you could say like the agrarian age, since we started farming, it's like 10,000 years. So the history of the human organism, that would be, if it was a roll of toilet paper, that would be like a little tiny itty bitty sliver of your human experience on this timeline, this linear timeline. And so during that forever, essentially, if you wanted to do a thing, you moved yourself into the thing. It's like the coding that we run on, and so when you're out there camping and all that, the thing that I wanted to say that I was excited about was, starting to, as far as actionable tools that people can do that matter, is starting to position your activities, uh, and your friendships, and your business relationships, and like all the things, also around joy, play, movement, nature. Like, take the medicine Like there's like we have this cabinet that pretty much unanimously every expert would agree is like, yep, it's always good for you, and start to infuse that into your activities with other people. And ultimately, I think that tribal connection, that friendship, that relationship, there's like the statistic or the concept that loneliness is worse than smoking 18 cigarettes a day. And it's like, it's
Yeah.
this massive killer. It's this down regulator of the human soul, and then you can extrapolate out, and what is soul? Maybe soul's, associated with our immune function, associated with our lymphatic flow and our cardiovascular function, all those things. I think if you feel like, if you've what David Goggins says, like, I took his soul, that feeling of, oh, I'm a loser, right? That soul, like, you take that has physiological translations,
Yeah.
and I think that having that human connection, I know that having that human connection is, it's invaluable. So starting again, positioning our lives around what brings me closer into contributing to something meaningful, what brings me closer into spending time with people that I love about and care about, and nurturing those relationships, creating anchors in my life. And so that's support, right? So we talk about
Yeah.
finding a neutral spine and finding intra-abdominal pressure and finding, reducing, like if you got like a flaccid joint or hyperlaxity, it's like too much looseness. It's unstable. It's out of control. And so those are postural expressions for a felt state. If you feel unstable, you feel out of control, you feel like chaos, how does that translate in the body? Anyway, so that was a long
No, no,
monologue, but
dude. But
essentially,
this is why I like your work, because I think
yeah,
it demonstrates the interconnectedness to, and this lack of like it's not necessarily sort of cause and effect, which is a reasonable jumping point to talk about. The way you organized the book has a lot to do with, we've danced across a myriad of them, but this idea in part one, welcoming one to one's body, this understanding of how, where you fit. How do you sort of self-diagnose? That's the postural stuff we talked about as an example, not
yeah,
all encompassing, but as an example. The second part of the book, the daily movements, you've already spoken about, hip hinging and breathing and hanging. These are examples of things that are available to everyone. Two that we haven't covered, walking and floor sitting. We did in a
yeah,
way because you mentioned, how do you join your work things with things that people pretty much universally agree are good for you, like
yeah,
walking. Walking meetings are incredible. I started doing those about 6 or 7 years ago, and I love it. If you can take a walk with a colleague for work, this idea, it seems more valuable than just the meeting, clearly.
yeah,
Um,
right.
but
Yeah. And it
floor.
causes you to think differently, so as you're out there taking
Yeah.
that walk, if you want to have creative ideas, writing, we'll get to the things. This will be very short, but the way that you move, that some of the research that's been done around this is specifically with cursive handwriting. And the
Mm.
suggestion is that upon writing in cursive, because we're going through these flowy movements with our wrists, it can be supportive with, supporting creativity, and so
Mm.
so that's just science sometimes is funny, where we're trying to create these isolated reductions essentially, but you just, if you get done with a dance class, and how does your mind feel? It doesn't, we don't need to always have like, okay, it's like, just go do the thing,
Hormones
like
that are being, yeah.
yeah, like, tell me how you feel. It's probably way easier for you to walk up to that person that would have made you nervous before, because you're in your body, and you went through this time and you're expressing, and all of a sudden you're on your drive home, you have all these new ideas, and you needed to take yourself through those motions in order to kind of get the gears turning. The floor sitting stuff
Hmm.
it's kind of like, that's like we were talking about before with like the Tanzania
Yep.
cultures in the world that spend time, with their hips down below the height of their knees, which we've kind of we've transitioned away from that as modern
Yeah.
culture. We spend the entirety of our day sitting in some version of hips at 90 degrees, ankles 90 degrees, knees 90 degrees, usually kind of slouched over. That position, if you were to look at any animal in nature, if they were in that, you remove the computer, remove the cell phone, you would look at that animal and you would assume, because that's the way that we're conveying information to each other, is through body language and voice tonality and the pacing of our language. But there's millions of bits of information, visual cues that we're sending back and forth to each other. And then sometimes we can get caught up in the words, but I think that the deeper meaning is that body language and the tone. If you were to see an animal in nature in that position, you would assume that animal is sick, right? You would assume that animal is sad. You would assume that animal just lost their mother or something. You'd be like, oh, like they just take a still frame picture, Chase Jarvis got the camera out, boom, got the photo. It had no concept of computers or cell phones. And you say, what's happening with that person? What's their state? You say, okay, sick or sad. And so we do that throughout the day for so much. The implications of that, I think that, you could kind of extrapolate your own ideas about it. But what you can see from a musculoskeletal perspective, at least, is cultures such as Northern Africa, Southeastern Asia, Eastern Mediterranean, specifically, are places that have been studied with this, spend a lot of time in floor-seated positions in general. There's other factors in here as well. But they have minimal to no instance of osteoarthritis of the hips, of the knees. Pelvic floor dysfunction is diminished. The adult diaper industry is slowly exceeding that of the baby diaper industry in the United States. So
Wow.
you get to a certain age and it's like, oh yeah, just start, you pee your pants, it's just what you do. It's like, that once again, there's a movement conversation in all of this. And
Yeah.
when we strip ourselves of these natural healing mechanisms, movement mechanisms that allow our cells to restore to full function, then of course there's going to be a cost to that. So something that we can do is just start to make it easy and accessible for you and your family and your friends to just get down to that range of motion, to get down to the ground. So get a really comfortable rug in your house, maybe get some Moroccan poofs or some floor cushions. I have a couch here, I have a TV, I have, like, my place looks pretty normal-ish. But I'm sitting on the ground right now. You wouldn't have known that unless you saw me like get up. But this whole entire time I'm in a 90-90 position with my legs. I was in a straddle position before. I was in a cross-legged position, so I'm like, I've been yogaing this whole entire time,
Wow.
and my computer's is there's a window right here. There's a river about 130 feet away, so I can see. I'm looking into the trees. I can't see the water, but I know it's there, which makes me feel good. So I'm getting natural sunlight coming in here. So I'm in I'm in captivity, but I'm augmenting the captivity. It's kind of like have you heard the experiment Rat Park that was done in British Columbia? Have
No.
you heard this? So
No.
the old idea of, if you give a rat cocaine water, you give them cocaine, then they're just going to ruin their lives and just become, abusive cocaine addicts, and they're just going to stew and die and just keep on sucking on that cocaine feeder. That's ridiculous. Like, if you give a rat purpose, and you give them play, and you give them a rat girlfriend, and you give them, they called it, this was done I think in the 70s or 80s. If you I'm trying to think, the guy, his last name was Alexander. I don't remember the researcher's first name, but they called it Rat Park, and they made this great, like, rat lifestyle, and they gave the rat all the cocaine at once, and the rat's like not that into cocaine, actually, like every now and again have a bump, but it was not wrecking my life.
Oh, I'm going to use
You know,
that one. That's amazing.
and so sorting
Enough
out,
good stuff in there. Yeah, enough good
yeah,
stuff in your life. Yeah, you make choices that
you
will
make
support you.
you make better choices, and so that would be, it's just, I mean, fall risk. That's the number one leading reason for elderly, our parents, needing to enter into some assisted living facility, and it's like, that in and of itself is just such an astounding concept that we're choosing, consciously or unconsciously, to just let that piece of ourselves go. There's nothing inherently human about not being able to get up and down off of the ground. If you are doing that with any level of regularity through your life, which any natural human, like, in any natural environment would be doing with regularity, it doesn't just one day like go away. And so that in and of itself, I would think would be enough. But then there's, the benefits of lymphatic circulation and blood circulation and general mobility of all of your joints and just tissue health, pelvic floor dysfunction per mentioned, osteoarthritis. Like, it does all the things, and that's most healthy mediums or practices or choices that we make. They're almost always shotguns. Like, there's not a lot of things in the human complex body as opposed to the complicated body. In a car, you can get a paint job, or you can, change the oil actually would affect a lot of things, but you can change specific parts and it just affects that place. Most of the things that make a person happy, healthy, whole, they're pretty much, they pull all the levers at one time.
And by shotgun,
It's
just
very
so people
convenient.
understand, but by shotgun, you mean they have a lot of effect, right?
Yeah.
They're not a laser beam, which has a very narrow effect. And to me, that's part of the challenge with modern, say, pharmaceuticals, right? An aspirin
Right.
an aspirin today would not pass the FDA because it's too general. It helps too
Right.
many. It has too many different activators versus
Yeah.
the drug has to be, inhibit this particular protein from binding to this thing, which has this particular outcome, and
Yeah.
it's not approved if it's not narrow enough.
Yeah.
Um, this I just I don't want to blow smoke, but I love your approach to the human condition, movement, the environment, our ability to control our environment and how that shapes our mind and our body. I know we covered a lot of ground because your work is very broad and comprehensive. Things like, aligning your home for health and creativity with these visual cues and hanging bars. And it's all so available to everyone. And then you hear stats like you just shared. The number one reason people go into home is because they can't get up off the floor that they fell down to. Like,
Yep.
we can do better. We can align our office for healthier, um, healthier work experience. We can shift
And better
our
and better business, better outcome.
yeah, yeah.
There's no,
That's
once
yeah.
once again, the shotgun thing. It's not like, okay, I'm just gonna be healthier and just gonna be, have less inflammation and be more creative and, feel more generally just like awake and have joie de vivre. I'm just exclusively do that, and then my work is gonna suffer. It's like, no, that's what
That's
makes you magnetic. That's what makes people
yeah.
want to work with you. That's all.
It's so on point, and I want to thank you for your work again. For those folks at home, Align Method. Where would you steer people? Obviously, the book, the podcast. I don't know if you want to add any additional color. Uh,
Yeah.
what's the best place for people to be in touch with you and your work?
Well, I think most people probably just grab their cell phones and go to Instagram typically. So all of my stuff is at Align Podcast. Instagram's Align Podcast called Align Podcast. If you're open to it, I'd love to have you on the podcast at some point. No hard feelings
Sign
if
me up.
not. Oh, good,
Sign
cool,
me
great.
up.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
in.
that'd be great.
Committing here in front of
Yeah,
hundreds of
right.
thousands of people. It's
Yeah,
happening.
I love it. Let's do that. And then the book, The Align Method, it's an expanded, revised version. It comes out January 11th, and so you can pre-order that if that's before January 11th, and if not, ideally you walk to your bookstore to grab it. If you are going to get on Amazon, maybe do it on a laptop, like outside. That'd be great. Take your sunglasses off so you're getting full spectrum light under your eyeballs. It's my suggestion.
Now, you have your thinking is simple and profound, and that's the very difficult combination that I really respect and admire. This community will rush out and take care of advanced purchasing. Your book again comes
Yes,
out in
sir.
January. We're dropping it before then, so around your pub week to help with that. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
the work that you do, Aaron. I'm happy to be on the podcast. We'll flip that around and maybe even
Great.
syndicate it back to this listening audience.
Great.
Thank you for the work that you bring to the world. And again, folks, the book is outstanding, and you really enjoy the podcast. If you've enjoyed any component of what we talked about today, making your workplace better, your home better, and overall your life better through movement and alignment. Aaron, thank you for joining us on the show. You've been an amazing guest. And until next time, everybody out there in the world, we bid you all adieu.
Woo.